Sheep, and the Lord is my shepherd, watching over my soul to keep guarding over me ever, watching wherever I go. And when the winds blow, He is my shelter. And when I'm lost and alone, He rescues me. And when the lion comes, He is my victory, constantly watching over me. He is constantly watching over me.
A Journey Through the Bible, Day 168 of 365, Friday, June the 17th, 2022. Today's reading, 2 Chronicles chapter 15, verses 1 through 8, and verse 17 and 18. 1 Kings chapter 15, 12, 14, and 15. 2 Chronicles chapter 15, verses 9 through 15, 1 Kings chapter 15, verse 13, 2 Chronicles chapter 15, verse 16 and 19, 1 Kings chapter 15, verses 16 and 32, 2 Chronicles chapter 16, verses 1 through 6, 1 Kings chapter 15, verses 17 through 22, and chapter 16, verses 1 through 4 and verse 7, 2 Chronicles chapter 16, verses 7 through 10, 1 Kings chapter 16, verses 5, 6, and 8, and 14, verses 9 through 13, 20, verses 15 through 19, and verses 21 through 28. Today's readings begin with more events in the good reign of Asa. Elah, north, 2 evil years. Zimri, north, 7 evil days. Omri, north, 12 evil years, about 929 BC. 2 Chronicles chapter 15, verses 1 through 8. The Spirit of God came upon Azariah, the son of Oded, and he went out to meet Asa, and said to him, Hear me, Asa, and all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord is with you while you are with him. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you. For a long time Israel was without the true God, and without a teaching priest, and without law. But when in their distress they turned to the Lord, the God of Israel, and sought him, he was found by them. In those times there was no peace to him who went out, or to him who came in. For great disturbances afflicted all the inhabitants of the lands. They were broken in pieces. Nation was crushed by nation, and city by city. For God troubled them with every sort of distress. But you, take courage. Do not let your hands be weak, for your work shall be rewarded. As soon as Asa heard these words, the prophecy of Azariah, the son of Oded, he took courage, and put away the detestable idols from all the land of Judah and Benjamin, and from the cities that he had taken in the hill country of Ephraim. And he repaired the altar of the Lord that was in front of the vestibule of the house of the Lord. 2 Chronicles chapter 15, verses 17 through 18. But the high places were not taken out of Israel. Nevertheless, the heart of Asa was wholly true in all his days. And he brought into the house of God the sacred gifts of his father, and his own sacred gifts, silver and gold and vessels. 1 Kings chapter 15, verse 12. He put away the melt cult prostitutes out of the land, and removed all the idols that his fathers had made. 1 Kings chapter 15, verses 14 through 15. But the high places were not taken away. Nevertheless, the heart of Asa was wholly true to the Lord in all his days. And he brought into the house of the Lord the sacred gifts of his father, and his own sacred gifts, silver and gold and vessels. 2 Chronicles chapter 15, verses 9 through 10. And he gathered all Judah and Benjamin, and those from Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon, who were residing with them, for great numbers had deserted to him from Israel, when they saw that the Lord his God was with him. And they were gathered at Jerusalem in the 3rd month of the 15th year of the reign of Asa. Second Chronicles chapter 15 verses 11 through 15. They sacrificed to the Lord on that day from the spoil that they had brought 700 oxen and 7,000 sheep. And they entered into a covenant to seek the Lord, the God of their fathers, with all their heart and with all their soul. But that whoever would not seek the Lord, the God of Israel, should be put to death. Whether young or old, man or woman, they swore an oath to the Lord with a loud voice, and with shouting, and with trumpets, and with horns. And all Judah rejoiced over the oath, for they had sworn with all their heart, and had sought him with all their whole desire. And he was found by them, and the Lord gave them rest all around. 1 Kings chapter 15, verse 13. He also removed Maacah, his mother, from being queen mother, because she had made an abominable image for Asherah. And Asa cut down her image and burned it at the brook Kidron. 2 Chronicles chapter 15, verse 16. Even Maacah, his mother, King Asa removed from being queen mother because she had made a detestable image for Asherah. Asa cut down her image, crushed it, and burned it at the brook Kidron. 2 Chronicles chapter 15, verse 19. And there was no more war until the 35th year of the reign of Asa. 1 Kings chapter 15, verse 16. And there was war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, all their days. 1 Kings chapter 15, verse 32. And there was war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, all their days. 2 Chronicles chapter 16, verses 1 through 6. In the 36th year of the reign of Asa, Baasha, king of Israel, went up against Judah and built Ramah, that he might permit no one to go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah. Then Asa took silver and gold from the treasuries of the house of the Lord and the king's house, and sent them to Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, who lived in Damascus, saying, There is a covenant between me and you, as there was between my father and your father. Behold, I am sending to you silver and gold. Go, break your covenant with Baasha, king of Israel, that he may withdraw from me. And Ben-Hadad listened to King Asa, and sent the commanders of his armies against the cities of Israel. And they conquered Ijon, Dan, Abel, Maam, and all the store cities of Naphtali. And when Baasha heard of it, he stopped building Ramah, and let his work cease. Then King Asa took all Judah, and they carried away the stones of Ramah and its timber with which Baasha had been building, and with them he built Geba and Mizpah. 1 Kings chapter 15, verses 17 through 22. Baasha, king of Israel, went up against Judah and built Ramah, that he might prevent no one to go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah. Then Asa took all the silver and the gold that were left in the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house, and gave them into the hands of his servants. And King Asa sent them to Ben-Hadad, the son of Taberman, the son of Hezion, king of Syria, who lived in Damascus, saying, Let there be a covenant between me and you, as there was between my father and your father. Behold, I am sending to you a present of silver and gold. Go, break your covenant with Baasha, king of Israel, that he may withdraw from me. And Ben-Hadad listened to King Asa, and sent the commanders of his armies against the cities of Israel, and conquered Ijon, Dan, Abel-Beth, Maacah, and Chinneroth, with all the land of Naphtali. And when Baasha heard of it, he stopped building Ramah, and he lived in Tirzah. Then King Asa made a proclamation to all Judah, none was exempt. And they carried away the stones of Ramah and its timber, with which Baasha had been building, and with them King Asa built Geba of Benjamin and Mizpah. 1 Kings chapter 16, verses 1 through 4. And the word of the Lord came to Jehu, son of Hanani, against Baasha, saying, Since I exalted you out of the dust, and made you leader over my people Israel, and you have walked in the way of Jeroboam, and have been made my people Israel to sin, provoking me to anger with their sins. Behold, I will utterly sweep away Baasha and his house, and I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Anyone belonging to Baasha who dies in the city, the dog shall eat, and anyone who dies in the fields, the birds of the heavens shall eat. 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 7. Moreover, the word of the Lord came by the prophet Jehu to the the son of Hanani, against Baasha and his son, both because of all the evil that he did in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to anger with the work of his hands in being like the house of Jeroboam, and also because he destroyed it. 1 Kings chapter 16, verses 5 through 6. Now the rest of the acts of Baasha, and what he did, and his might, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Baasha slept with his fathers, and was buried at Tirzah. And Elah his son reigned in his place. 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 8. In the 26th year of Asa, king of Judah, Elah the son of Baasha began to reign over Israel in Tirzah, and he reigned 2 years. 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 14. Now the rest of the acts of Elah, all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? 1 Kings chapter 16, verses 9 through 13. But his servant Zimri, commander of half of his chariots, conspired against him, when he was at Tirzah, drinking himself drunk in the house of Arza, who was over the household of Tirzah. Zimri came in and struck him down and killed him, in the 27th year of Asa king of Judah, and reigned in his place. When he began to reign, as soon as he had seated himself on his throne, he struck down all the house of Baasha. He did not leave him a single male of his relatives or his friends. Thus Zimri destroyed all the house of Baasha according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke against Baasha by Jehu the prophet, for all the sins of Baasha and the sins of Elah his son, which they sinned, and which they made Israel to sin, provoking the Lord God of Israel to anger with their idols. 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 20. Now the rest of the acts of Zimri, and the conspiracy that he made, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? 1 Kings chapter 16, verses 15 through 19. In the 27th year of Asa, king of Judah, Zimri reigned 7 days in Tirzah. Now the troops were encamped against Gibeathon, which belonged to the Philistines. And the troops who were encamped heard it said, Zimri has conspired, and he has killed the king. Therefore all Israel made Omri, the commander of the army, king over Israel that day in the camp. So Omri went up from Gibeathon, and all Israel with him, and they besieged Tirzah. And when Zimri saw that the city was taken, he went into the citadel of the king's house, and burned the king's house over him with fire, and died, because of his sins that he committed, doing evil in the sight of the Lord, walking in the way of Jeroboam, and for his sin which he committed, making Israel to sin. 1 Kings chapter 16, verses 21 through 28. Then the people of Israel were divided into 2 parts. Half of the people followed Tibni, the son of Ginath, to make him king, and half followed Omri. But the people who followed Omri overcame the people who followed Tibni, the son of Ginath. So Tibni died, and Omri became king. In the 31st year of Asa, king of Judah, Omri began to reign over Israel, and he reigned for 12 years. 6 years he reigned in Tirzah. He bought the hill of Samaria from Shemer for 2 talents of silver. And he fortified the hill, and called the name of the city that he built Samaria, after the name of Shemer, the owner of the hill. Omri did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and did more evil than all who were before him. For he walked in all the way of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and in the sins that he made Israel to sin, provoking the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger by their idols. Now the rest of the acts of Omri that he did, and that he showed, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Omri slept with his fathers, and was buried in Samaria, and Ahab his son reigned in his place.
We are his children, and he is our Father, watching over our soul. Great is his love for his sons and his daughters, watching wherever